Welcome, truth seekers. Have you ever paused in the stillness of dawn and asked yourself, how did the rebel once called Iblis find his way into the very realm of the divine? How did one destined for ruin rise to dwell among angels, only to fall from grace? Let's lean into that question. Let it settle like a whisper in your mind. Tonight, we peer into the enigma of the pre-Adam world, where creatures unlike us stirred the quiet of the earth. From what whispers of ancient exegesis emerge the Jinn, massive, uncanny beings, and their counterparts the Bin, spilling blood and chaos across a barren land long before humans ever walked its soil. These primordial beings, scarcely recalled now, form the shadows on the curtain before Adam's arrival. Imagine landscapes swept by unseen giants born of fire and water, mingled perhaps with earthen elements, names like Khan and San, hinted in some traditions, spoken in hushed academic corridors, speaking of deeper, older orders that time nearly forgot. And then, from that maelstrom, come the Jinn, the children of Jinn, who once ruled Earth. Their corruption grew, blood flowed, so God commissioned Iblis, then a noble among angels and Jinn, to lead a celestial battalion and drive them away. What a strange symmetry. A being born of flame and appointed by angels rising into the divine, only for hubris to seal his fate. How does one shift from guardian to rebel? That, dear listeners, is where our journey truly begins. Welcome to Unleash Facts, the place where history secrets, unsolved mysteries, and mind-blowing truths come to light. Before we begin, let us remember our brothers and sisters in Gaza, enduring hardship and loss under oppression. We will not forget them, and we stand with them until they reclaim their land and live in peace and dignity. Free Palestine. Long before Adam was formed from clay, the earth was far from empty. Ancient scholars and early commentators tell of worlds before ours worlds ruled by creatures, whose forms and lives were unlike anything we know today. Ibn Kathir writes of beings called the Wan, the Ban, the Khan, and the San, each said to have reigned over the earth in distant ages, leaving behind only faint traces in the memory of creation. These were not human, nor angel, nor even Jinn as we know them. They were older, primal forces, existing in cycles, one race rising, another falling, the earth becoming a stage for repeated acts of rebellion and ruin. The earliest among them, the Wan and Ban, are said to have been mighty and numerous, yet consumed by violence. Their wars tore through the lands, spilling blood and spreading corruption until they were erased, replaced by the Khan and San, whose rule fared no better. One after another, each of these ancient orders succumbed to the same pattern power, corruption, destruction, until only one new kind of being was left to inherit the earth, the Jinn. The Jinn were born from smokeless fire, swift and unseen, dwelling in mountains, seas, and the desolate stretches of the world. They multiplied quickly, built civilizations, and for a time they too thrived. But as their power grew, so did their arrogance. Their kings became tyrants, their warriors hunted without mercy, and blood was once again poured upon the earth. It is said their leader in those early days was a being called Jinn, whose descendants carried both great strength and great defiance. It was in these days of chaos that a child was born among the Jinn, a child who would one day be known to all creation as Iblis. Accounts tell that even in his youth, he was unlike the others, intelligent, driven, and ambitious. His sharp mind and discipline set him apart from the reckless nature of his kin. The corruption of the Jinn had reached such depths that the Almighty commanded the angels to march upon the earth. subduing their armies and restoring order. Among those angels came warriors of unmatched purity and power, yet they took note of the young Iblis. Whether out of admiration for his talents or recognition of his loyalty in aiding them against his own kind, they brought him upward away from the world of fire and into the company of angels in the heavens. There, Iblis was raised in a realm of light, learning the ways of obedience, worship, and discipline. He grew in rank and honor, his origins as a Jinn becoming an afterthought to those who saw his devotion. Yet the fire from which he was made still burned within him, waiting for the moment when it would reveal its true nature. And so, the stage was set not yet for Adam's creation, but for a trial that would shake the heavens themselves. In the stillness of the heavens, where angels moved in perfect obedience, a new command descended, one that would forever alter the balance of creation. The Almighty declared that a new being would be brought into existence, one unlike the angels of light or the Jinn of smokeless fire. This being would be formed from clay, molded with divine precision, and given the breath of life directly from the Creator himself. The announcement rippled through the ranks of the angels. They had seen what the earth's earlier inhabitants had done, how the Wan, Ban, Khan, San, and finally the Jinn had corrupted the land. Some wondered aloud, "Will you create one who will spread corruption therein and shed blood, while we glorify and praise you?" But the answer was firm, carrying a mystery beyond their understanding. "I know that which you do not know." Iblis, by now firmly established among the heavenly hosts, heard this decree as well. He had risen far from his origins in the world of fire, now living among the angels in honor. To him, this new creation was strange. Clay was lowly compared to fire, heavy compared to the swiftness of flame. He saw himself as superior by nature, for he had fought alongside angels, worshipped without ceasing, and proven his loyalty in the wars against his own kind. The angels, obedient as ever, watched as the clay form of Adam was shaped tall, majestic, yet motionless. Iblis, however, observed with something deeper than curiosity. He walked around the lifeless figure, examining its form, and according to some narrations, even entered its hollow frame, testing its nature. What he saw only confirmed his pride. Clay was fragile, slow, and prone to need. To him, this was not a creature worthy of standing in the ranks of the pure, but the divine plan was already unfolding. The angels were commanded to prostrate before Adam once the breath of life entered him, a gesture not of worship to Adam, but of obedience to the Creator's command, an acknowledgement of Adam's unique station. Iblis listened, but in the depths of his heart, a spark of arrogance flared. He could not see how this clay-born creature could surpass the brilliance of fire. Still, the moment of Adam's animation had not yet come. The breath had not yet been given, and the heavens awaited the sign that would change everything. Iblis stood among them, his thoughts hidden, his pride quietly building, unaware that this command would soon draw the line between his rise and his fall. The moment arrived. In the realm of the unseen, the lifeless form of Adam lay before the gathered angels. Then, by the will of the Almighty, the breath of life entered him. Clay became flesh, stillness became movement, and the first man opened his eyes to the light of creation. He rose, his form towering, his presence unlike anything the heavens had ever beheld. The divine voice commanded, clear and undeniable, "Prostrate yourselves before Adam." In an instant, the angels obeyed. Wings folded, foreheads touched the radiant floor of the heavens, their obedience as pure as the light from which they were made. But in the midst of their submission, one figure remained standing. Iblis, once honored, once raised to the highest ranks, did not move. His gaze was fixed on Adam, but his refusal was not directed at the man before him. It was defiance against the one who had commanded. When asked why he would not bow, his answer was wrapped in pride and contempt. "I am better than him." You created me from fire, and you created him from clay. In that single moment, his years of worship, his elevation from the Jinn to the company of angels, all collapsed into rebellion. His heart, once disciplined, now burned with envy, seeing Adam as an intruder who had taken the favor he believed belonged to him. The command had been simple, but for Iblis it was a test of submission, and he failed. This was no small disobedience. It was arrogance before the Creator, a rejection of divine wisdom, and the first act of open rebellion in the heavens. The sentence was swift. Iblis was cast out, stripped of his honor, and branded among the accursed. But even in his fall, he did not repent. Instead, he vowed to lead Adam and his descendants astray, to prove that they were unworthy of the place they had been given. His request for respite until the day of judgment was granted, and so began a war that would span the rest of human history. Yet the story of Iblis's downfall is more than a tale of pride. It is the unraveling of a mystery that began long before Adam drew his first breath. A story rooted in the forgotten ages of creation, in the rise and fall of beings older than humanity, and in the hidden fire that shaped the first great deceiver. Cast down from the honor of the heavens, Iblis stood at the threshold of his new reality, a being stripped of grace, yet still burning with the fire of pride. His fall did not humble him. It sharpened his resolve. The command he had defied was, in his mind, proof that the Creator had favored Adam unjustly. And so, in the shadows of his banishment, he made a vow that would echo through all generations to come. He swore by the very majesty of God, "Because you have sent me astray, I will lie in wait for them on your straight path. I will come to them from the front, from behind, from their right, and from their left, and you will find most of them ungrateful." It was not just rebellion, it was a declaration of eternal war, one that would target not only Adam, but every child born from him. The Almighty, in perfect justice, granted him respite until the appointed hour, the day of judgment. This was not mercy in the way Iblis might have hoped, but a stage upon which his true nature would be revealed, and where humanity's own choices would determine their fate. He would have time to whisper, to tempt, to mislead, but never to force. The path of obedience would remain open for those who sought it. Iblis's first target was not a stranger, it was Adam himself, and the companion given to him in the tranquility of paradise. The Creator had granted Adam and Hawa a home filled with beauty, abundance, and safety. Every tree, every stream, every path was their save for one command. They were not to approach a certain tree. The reason was not for Iblis to know, yet it became the very point upon which he would launch his attack. With cunning born of ancient knowledge, Iblis began to weave his deception. He approached not with threats, but with persuasion, cloaking his words in the guise of sincerity. He swore to them that he was a well-wisher, that the tree would not bring harm, but instead unlock a destiny beyond their current state. He whispered of immortality, of kingship, of a life free from limitation. It was the first whisper of temptation in human history, and it found its mark. Adam and Hawa ate from the tree, and the reality of their choice descended upon them. Their innocence was clothed in shame, and they sought forgiveness with sincere repentance. Yet Iblis had achieved what he wanted. Humanity was no longer in the untouched safety of paradise. But his mission was far from complete. This was not the end. It was only the opening move in a game he intended to play until the last soul drew its breath. When Adam and Hawa descended to earth, a new chapter began not just for them, but for every soul that would come after. The earth was vast, untamed, and filled with the potential for both flourishing and ruin. For Iblis, it was the perfect battleground. He no longer moved openly among the ranks of the angels, nor walked freely in the light of paradise. Now, he lurked in the unseen, weaving his influence from the shadows. His goal was no longer simply to confront Adam face to face. His strategy was far more patient, far more insidious. He would target the heart, the mind, and the desires of mankind. He understood that weakness often lies not in great acts of defiance, but in the small compromises people make each day. If he could turn those compromises into habits, and habits into character, he could shape a soul long before it realized it had strayed. Over the ages, Iblis adapted his approach to every generation. For some, he whispered pride, convincing them they were too intelligent, too enlightened to submit to a creator. For others, he planted greed, urging them to seize more than they needed, even if it meant harming others. For yet another, he offered distractions, comforts, pleasures, and pursuits that seemed harmless, yet pulled the heart steadily away from remembrance of God. But Iblis was not without limits. He could not force anyone's hand. He could only suggest, persuade, and deceive. The human will remain intact, the choice always belonging to the individual. This was the balance of the divine plan. Temptation would exist, but so would guidance, truth, and the capacity to resist. From the earliest tribes to the grandest empires, the fingerprints of his influence could be seen in every age wars driven by arrogance, corruption disguised as progress, faith traded for fleeting pleasures. Yet, in every age too, there were those who resisted him, who recognized his whispers for what they were, and stood firm. For Iblis, these resistors were the enemy he despised most. Their obedience to the Creator was a reminder of what he had lost, and of the decision that had sealed his fate. And so, his war continued not in a single battlefield, but in the unseen struggles within every human heart. The war that began in the heavens was never confined to that realm. It simply shifted its battlefield. From the moment Iblis defied his Creator, the conflict spilled into every corner of existence, touching every soul that would ever live. Every whisper in the stillness of thought, every subtle pull toward arrogance, greed, or disobedience, these are not random impulses. They are the echo of a vow made long ago by a being who swore to lead mankind astray. Iblis moves with urgency, for he knows his time is limited. His respite extends only until the day of judgment, and every moment until then is an opportunity to corrupt, deceive, and drag as many as possible toward his fate. His words on that day still burn. I will come at them from the front, from behind, from their right, and from their left. His plan is relentless, but his victory is impossible, for the one who created him has already decreed his end. And here lies the great irony. The ascent that took Iblis from the earth into the ranks of the angels was never a mark of permanent favor. It was a divine test. He stood higher than any Jinn before him, but that height only revealed the darkness in his heart. He was offered a place of honor through humility and obedience, but pride turned that opportunity into his eternal ruin. The same fire that gave him life became the blaze of his downfall. So, how did the devil end up in heaven? Not by accident, nor by his own strength, but by the will of the Creator, who allowed him to rise so that his hidden arrogance could be exposed for all of creation to witness. It was a stage upon which his true self could no longer hide. For us, this is not just a story locked in the pages of ancient commentary. It is a mirror. The whispers he used on Adam and Hava are the same he uses today, dressed in new disguises, but carrying the same intent, to make us forget who we are and who created us. The test that unmasked Iblis is the same kind of test that will unmask us. This account comes from the works of Ibn Kathir and other classical scholars, preserving the narrative of the beings before Adam, the Wan, Ban, Khan, and San, the rise of the Jinn. The birth of Iblis, his battles alongside the angels, his ascent to the heavens, and the pride that hurled him down. It is a warning carved into history that the highest rank without humility is nothing but a cliff edge, and that the war Iblis began still rages in the unseen corners of our own hearts. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.